And
That's
so
beautiful.
I saw the bottle was cute, and I was like, I
We're
don't
gonna
think.
be. It says live.
Oh,
And then I bought it because of Wilda. It would
Sheila
come.
Are we
put.
live?
good evening and welcome to WBGO's panel discussion for Women's History Month, Women's HERStory, Music Media Mentors. We're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and on WBGO.org. I'm Lezlie Harrison. Good evening. I'm a vocalist and the host of Come Sunday. I am joined tonight by my esteemed on-air sistrins of WBGO. Please welcome former host of Evening Jazz and the Latin Jazz Cruise, voiceover artist, and a very effective closer for our on-air fund drives, Sister Awilda Rivera. Good evening, Awilda.
Hola.
Let's also welcome the host of Weekend Jazz Overnight, Salon Sessions, and the Sunday Night Music Mix. She is also a successful author and the queen of hang. I know this all too well, Miss Sheila Anderson. Good evening, Sheila. Also joining our panel is a seasoned publicist who currently heads the public relations department of Shananchi Entertainment. Shawnee. I knew I was saying it wrong. The host of Saturday Evening Jazz, the global jazz queen, Monifa Brown. Good evening, Monifa.
Good evening.
We also welcome a young woman who keeps me in stitches with her hilarious post, her Twitter post about being a mother to baby Jay. She certainly can appreciate the art of relaxing and unwinding at the end of a weekday. The host of Lights Out, Nicole Sweeney. And last but not least, the newest member of our WBGO family, but certainly no stranger to radio, having spent over 2 decades in the New York market, previously at the WRVR and CD 101, as well as the legendary WBLS. She is also a voiceover artist, an actress, and the host of our newest program, Favorite Things. Welcome to WBGO, Pat Prescott.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Lezlie. Great to be here.
Great to see you, ladies. Good evening, ladies. It is indeed a pleasure spending time with all of you, sharing some of her story on how we all became involved in this music, our mentors, and our work in media. And we hope to share this with you, our viewers, this evening, and share with you how we all ended up in this panel discussion and how we hope to educate, inspire, and share our journey with you this evening. So we'll also take some questions, and so feel free to put them in your various chats. I am looking forward to a very lively discussion this evening with all of us talkers. Let's begin with you, Pat. You have worked in the best of radio on the East and West Coast. How did you begin your journey in radio, in media in general?
Well, I certainly wasn't trying to get there. And you know, I was on a panel a few days ago with a bunch of Black female announcers from the New York area. And Vi Higginson was there, who I consider to be a mentor, the legendary WBLS broadcaster and the creator of the hit off-Broadway show, Mama, I Want to Sing. And, you know, I was looking at everybody who was on the panel. I'm like, I came before everybody on here except for Vi. So I'm like, this is where I am now, you know, 4 decades into this incredible business. After starting out as somebody who in college was an English major and secondary ed, I wanted to teach school. That was what I always wanted to do. And I became a middle school teacher when I got out of college. And I was living in New Orleans, and I was taking some graduate courses at the University of New Orleans, just happened to meet somebody who was coordinating hostesses for a DJ's convention for NATRA. Some of you all may remember that. That was a National Association of Television and Radio Announcers. It was the Black DJs organization.
Oh, yeah. In DC?
But they were having a conference in New Orleans that summer. And so I was a hostess. You know, we had to meet people at the airport and, you know, stand around at their receptions and stuff like that. And after that week, I was like, if these are the top broadcasters in the country, I know I could do this. and just always really loved music. I loved music, all kinds of music from forever, largely because of my dad, who had thousands of albums and used to play them. But I enrolled in a broadcasting school, went for 6 months, got a part-time job, which led to a full-time job, and I took a sabbatical leave from teaching, and that was 47 years ago. And I have worked, I tell you, it's been an amazing career. It's been a fantastic ride. And every time I think it's over, it looks like I get reincarnated in another form. And, you know, I just feel very grateful for all of that. And certainly to be here amongst you women who I have admired from afar, and at this radio station that really, you know, I've listened to for many, many, many years. To be a part of this family just means a lot at this stage of my career in particular.
Well, we're so delighted to have you here. And it was very interesting what you said. You were not trying to be in radio. And I don't think any of us were trying to be. I know I got my start by just hanging out with a guy, and he worked at the college radio station. And that's how, you know, I just kind of fell in, not thinking it would be a career for me. What about you, Sheila? How did you get involved in?
Well, again, not trying. I was in high school. I mean, I grew up liking jazz. My brother, God rest his soul, had an incredible collection of music, but specifically jazz. And my mom, you know, we had one record player, so Sunday was her day. She said we couldn't play any of our music, so Sunday was her day to play what she wanted to play. It could be Mahalia Jackson, Duke Ellington, opera, whatever, just the gamut. Nina Simone, to Joan Baez, it didn't matter. So I grew up with music. We all had to take an instrument. I had to take music in school. So I ended up studying the flute. But I love jazz. I wanted to be Bobby Humphrey. When I told her, I met her, we got to be friends. I said, Bobby, I wanted to be you in the 70s. But I realized that I was not very good at improvisation. So even though I had an idea of being a jazz musician, I was not good at improvisation, and I really hated theory. But I can play anything. I can play by ear. I just say name a tune, and I'm.
And can I just say, I have heard you sing, Sheila. So I don't know about that flute playing, but I have heard you sing. Okay. Don't you know I brought that
up? Yeah. Okay. I did sing at Smoke 2 times. That was years ago. And I gave my singing career. Wow. Yeah, I gave up my singing career. Lou Donaldson was in the front row the first time I sang. It was hilarious. He said, "You sing?" I said, "Neither can you." And everybody laughed. I love Lou Donaldson. But anyway, I digressed. But how I got on in the radio in the 70s, I was the resident DJ. I mean, I had a console that had a cassette, a turntable, and I was going in between the turntable because that was in the 70s. I mean, mother of invention, right? I had no idea that I was visionary. I had no vision. But anyway, long story short, I moved to New York in 1980, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. My plan was to come to New York, get my degree, go back home to Buffalo, New York, and call it a day. But I didn't want to. I wasn't ready to go back to New York, but Buffalo, but I didn't like New York. But I took a little quick radio course, and then I went to bartending school. I went to modeling school. I just did whatever. So I told John Valente at Birdland I wanted be a bartender because I want to work in a jazz club. I love the music. And he, turned me down. So I did a BGO, long story. But that's not really exactly how it happened. But in 1987, I started volunteering for WBGO. Mm-hmm. And after some years, one of the announcers, Ben Duncan, as a matter of fact, we're on the subway, and he said, you should be on BGO. I said, why? I mean, I don't have an experience. He said, oh, we need more women. You should talk to Gary, talk to Thurston. And I did. So I learned the board, and then a year and a half went by, and I asked for what I thought was possible because Sunday Morning Harmony was always in need of a host. Every few months, they need a new host. So I asked Thurston if I could do Sunday Morning Harmony. He laughed me out of his office. And a year and a half later, I was still there, volunteering because I went there to volunteer, not to be on the air. And then he said to me, hey, there's now a need of a host again. He said, you came in and you made some tapes. Can you come in temporarily to do the show? And we had the conversation November 94. That's when Alfredo's going away party was. And I started on air February 16th overnight, 1995. And my temporary job has blossomed.
Yes.
Into
well, thank you to Kirsten Briscoe, the former program director of WBGO, for checking that out and putting you on the air. And all these years later, here you still are.
I still are.
And you said you started as a volunteer. And Awilda, I remember when I was first working at WBGO back in the 80s, WBGO was my first job out of college, my first professional job. And I remember Awilda working, being a volunteer at WBGO, and she and I hanging out. Is that how you found your way to WBGO, as a volunteer, or did you want to be in radio and came to WBGO as a volunteer? And
No, that was not the plan. It was
once
never
again,
the plan.
not trying to be in radio.
I was just minding my own business, volunteering on Friday night and Saturday night with Jim Luce, Spaceman. Remember Spaceman?
Oh yeah. Jim Luce. Mm-hmm.
And Sunday morning, it was the Chico Mendoza show. It was at 6 o'clock till 10, ungodly hour, and it was a membership drive. Of course, and then Mr. Steve Robinson, who was the development director, he found out as I'm walking down the hall trying to exit the building, he found out I spoke Spanish, that I was Puerto Rican. He said, wait a minute, you can't leave. You have to do some pitches on the air in Spanish. I said, no, I don't, because I've been here all night. And the next thing you know, I'm like, there's this 10 o'clock, I'm still there. And about a week later, Al Pryor, who was the station's very first program director, called to ask me if I would come in to do a promo for the show change. They were going to change the show from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. the same day. And I came in and did some spots. I thought, well, what the hell? I'm moving on, right? Complete accident. If you told me I'd end up on radio, I would never ever believe you. Okay. Yeah. I'm someone who got left back at the second grade because I wouldn't speak up. My mother still couldn't believe that I was doing radio.
And you were here.
And tis the truth. Tis the truth. Long story short, it was a complete accident. But almost 3 decades later, I'm still loving it. I turned in the full-time spots and they reeled me back in. They never let me go. There was a big party, but Steve had no intention of letting me go. Of course, Steve came back and here I is.
Well, as I said, you are an effective closer. We always look forward to working with you during the fun drive. She closes the deal, right?
That's my sister. That's right.
Monifa Brown, you've been working at WBGO for over 25 years. I remember meeting you way back.
I was a teenager, long time.
Yes, I remember back in the late 80s, early 90s.
That's right.
But anyway, here you
Stories for another time.
So, yeah, that's the other story we're talking about. but I've watched your journey, and it's been wonderful to watch it. Tell me a little bit. Did Jazz find you? Did Jazz
definitely found me?
Did you find it?
Jazz found me, and I also feel like radio was something I actually tried to do. So my parents are big jazz fans, and it was a gift that was passed on to me. It was something that was always in the house. We were always going to the Vanguard, always going to the Village Gate to see Walter Davis Jr. Just the music was always a part of my life. I grew up listening to Rhonda Hamilton on the air, and my dad being from Philly, we spent a lot of time listening to WRTI and Aquila, who was on the air there. So there were these wonderful women who let me know that the idea of being on the air was possible. They kind of planted the seed in that vision. But Art Blakey says that to pass through this life and not experience this music is missing out on the best thing in life. And I feel like that's so true, that if this music hadn't been introduced to me, I wouldn't be the person that I am now. So I started off originally wanting to be a musician, like she played the flute, and then also studied. I wanted to be an opera singer. I went to music and art and thought I was going to meet Sarah Vaughan, and the rest was going to be history. She was going to take me under her wing, and I was going to really be this incredible singer. But at a certain point, sometimes you're surrounded by incredible musicians, And you're like, they just have that
That's
little
right.
extra something that maybe I don't have. I love this enough, but I can be involved in the music in some capacity and still get, that enjoyment and excitement from it. So I went on to study music therapy with a concentration in classical voice. And when I was at Temple University, which had WRTI, I thought this is a wonderful opportunity to get involved in the radio station. And again, I had another woman, Kimberly Berry, who was just a huge mentor for me, who put a lot of time and energy into giving me opportunities at the station. So I ended up doing that. But I also discovered publicity at the same time. And during the summers, I would intern for Shorefire Media, and they were Wynton Marsalis and Heavy D and Terrence Trent D'Arby and Bruce Springsteen's publicists. And I thought, well, it's another way to get involved in the music and not necessarily be a performer. But then I said, I got to get back to this WBGO, Thurston Briscoe. I'm going to get on the air. And it didn't just fall in my lap. It actually took me 3 years of cassettes, enlisting every journalist I knew to say, hey, do you know Thurston? Write a letter, send an email, tell him why I should be on the air. And after 3 years I remember hanging out with friends and stopping at 34th Street. And I'm like, sorry, guys, got to go to the post office and mail my cassettes. Literally, I was stalking him. So eventually he was like, okay, you can have this opportunity. Sheila was the first person who I filled in for. And over almost 30 years, 25, well, I don't know, maybe 27, I've been at the station and love it. Just love being on the air. It's an honor and a privilege, and love sharing the music I love with the people who love this music. So grateful.
Yeah, like all of you, I had no eyes set on being in radio, but I loved radio when I was growing up. I just loved listening to radio. I had my little portable radio. So I would, wherever city I landed in, I always looked for the Black radio station. And then when I got to the University of Massachusetts, like I said, I met a boy. He worked, well, by then he was a young man who worked at the radio station, and I started hanging out, and they were like, well, you should try it. And it was, they were playing jazz. So that's kind of how I got into the jazz element. But when I lived in Boston as a teenager, I used to listen to Rhonda Hamilton on the radio at WBUR. So, and she really was the only woman that was playing jazz at the time. And then when I'm leaving college now and I'm coming to New York, Marion Brown, the great saxophonist, said, you should work at this radio station. And there was an article in the New York Times about WBGO in which Rhonda and Al Pryor were in. And I'm thinking, oh, there's Rhonda. And I'm thinking, I can never work at a radio station, with somebody like Rhonda Hamilton, because, she was the queen of jazz radio to me at the time. Anyway, that's how I came about it. My first go around at WBGO. And then I don't know how many of you have gotten a message from Dorothea Kirk, Newark's first lady of jazz this evening, but she said, I'm listening and you better be good. And she is the reason that I am back at WBGO because she was so insistent, like, you need to be back on the air. You need to be back on the radio. You need to do it. So she has definitely been a mentor to me and to a lot of us. And one of the reasons that I am back working at WBGO and loving it. So that's been 7 years, going on 8 years for me now. What have you all noticed that's the difference between when you started in radio, so many years ago, to what's happening in radio and media, not just radio, but in media now? Sorry, with whoever wants to take it.
A lot more competition.
Pat, you obviously longer, but I started in '95, and there really was no internet, and at the time it was, Michael Ward and I would laugh about how he would make tapes, or we would make tapes of our shows, and we send them to people because in other countries or others, or I give them to my mom because she wanted to hear me on the air. So to me, the single most, what totally changed everything was the internet, because I think WBGO was the first station to stream, and that was on Jazz Central Station, and because there was a lot of stuff going on, so we were streaming some of the shows, I think, on Jazz Central Station, and that connected me with a lot of jazz people across the country, because people were making comments to and that was, I guess, 97, 98, around then, something like that. So to me, technology is what has totally changed.
What about you, Pat?
Hey, I think everything has changed,
Yeah.
and technology is a big part of that. But I think also just the level of competition. I mean, when I was first got into radio, wherever you lived, there would be your station.
Mhm.
That would be the station you listened to because it was the station that played the music that you liked.
Mhm.
And you listened to it all day. Anytime you turned on the radio, that was what you listened to. Now there are just so many options. And when you look at satellite, where not only do you have all the options, but it's just micro formatted. If you don't only like the music from the 50s, then that's all you have to listen to.
Right.
And there's everything that's available to anyone. Plus, people create their own music now. Ever since the advent of Spotify and Pandora and all of these predictive services that are getting into our head and learning what we like and then feeding us back what it is that they believe we like. That has changed everything. What's available in your car? I mean, you used to just get AM radio. And I remember there was just AM radio in the car. You didn't get FM radio in the car. Then you got FM. And I remember 8-tracks and cassettes and all of those changes. So it goes back to what Sheila's talking about. Technology really is at the heart of all of it, has changed just everything about it. But I think one of the main differences is, and something that I think that WBGO addresses this in ways that a lot of other places don't, is just the personalization of the presentation. When I was coming up, DJs were tastemakers. If Frankie Crocker liked a record, he was going to play it 20 times in a row, and you were going to listen to it. And before it was over, you knew every word to the whole song and everything else, because he would serve it up and people would listen to hear what is new, what's happening. I think that BGO still does a great job of that, does a great job of something else radio doesn't do well right now, which is to identify what it is that you are playing.
Yeah.
Because let's admit, people are listening because they want to hear the music. Right. And the music takes center stage. If you're not saying what it is that you're playing, and there's so much of that right now that I think is just horrible. And the other thing is just to add that personal touch with what it is that announcers do. That has been so minimalized over time, as people say, talk less. And I mean, I get it that people don't want to hear you talking a whole lot, but there is such a thing as presentation. It's how I'm serving it. I can take that same music and serve it up to you a different way every time, with the stories about the music and also about the people who are making the music. They are the stars. And I think that this radio station does a pretty good job of doing that. But it's something that I see that has changed a lot from what used to be in traditional radio.
Well, about 2 days ago on Twitter, somebody had written something about, I'm so used to having Shazam when I listen to the radio, but I don't have to when I listen to WBGO because they say who's being played. And I thought that to your point, that's pretty much exactly what she's saying, that we let
Well, I remember back in the day when we used to tell so much information about the music you were listening to.
Yeah.
Catalog number, every person who was playing on the record, where it was recorded, when it was
the whole set.
They're right.
And then when we stopped jazz musicians as though we were killing the music. Oh my God, you're killing the music. You're not saying who the side people are. You're not saying what's going on.
We want to play more music,
That's a whole different panel discussion, but yeah. Anyway.
I agree with a lot of things that we're saying about competition. There's just so much out there that's accessible to people. So the immediacy of things have changed. People's attention span has changed because you expect things immediately. And then the curation, everybody can be a curator right now, with people creating their own podcasts with their own Spotify playlists or Apple playlists, whatever they're doing. So there's a lot more to contend with. And we're really living in more of a global community now with the technology and social media making all of that possible. So all of these variables have changed the landscape for all media. And the ways that we have to reach people is really different now because of this change.
Right.
Yeah, people don't listen. People don't listen to radio like they used to. And that's why public radio, I read an article the other day, has to step up in how we do business and how we have to maintain the audience and bring some more on, It's a new day.
Nicole, how are you this evening?
I'm hanging in there. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I didn't even get to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this music and in radio in general.
That's okay. Thank you. The little one is just.
I know you have baby Jay to tend to, so give us as much as you can.
Yes, and she loves to talk about Bruno. So in case that song comes up, just bear with us. It's all about Encanto in this house, but I'm actually like Monifa. I got started on purpose. I wanted to work for Hot 97. Growing up in New York and listening to Angie Martinez. I grew up listening to Pat. I listened to, WBLS and Kiss FM. I grew up with a radio in my room. I never had a TV. My parents never allowed it. So the radio was truly my companion. And so I always knew that's what I wanted to do because I really felt like those DJs were my friends. And I went to school for broadcasting. I sought it out. I went to Temple. Me and Monifa.
Temple owls are everywhere.
I know, that's right. We didn't go at the same time, but it's nice that we still met up, right? But I went to
Felix
Temple.
Hernandez too.
That's right. Okay. And it has a great communications program. So I went to Temple, but at first I went to party more than I went to go to school. So I took a 7-year break and I actually decided to go back to Temple as a grown-up who had partied and whose mom was asking her, what was she doing with her life? I said, you know what? It's time to go back to school and figure that out. And so I took it seriously that time. I interned at WRTI. I interned at Good Day Philadelphia. I had like 3 interns, but everything dropped off except WRTI because that's where that's what I connected to the most. And I always talk about Donald Byrd because Blackbird was the song that made me say, oh my goodness, what is this? And I need more. I have to find out more. This is, and the crazy thing about that song is it led me to realize that this music had always been around me in the form of hip hop, and jazz is always a part of everyone's life, whether they realize it or not. It just takes that moment for it to hit you. And so once Donald Byrd's Blackbird hit me, I was like, sorry, Hot 97. I don't want to be anywhere else but with this music. And guess what? The connection that I got from Hot 97 and that music is I still get to connect to that music in so many deeper ways through jazz. So I wanted to be here. I haven't left since.
And Nicole, who were your mentors growing up in this music?
I had what I call silent mentors. That's, I had a professor at Temple that said, you can have silent mentors. They don't have to know that they're mentoring you. You can just follow them and look at what they do from afar. Some people don't want that pressure. And I always took that to heart. And so I would tune into WBGO from my days when I lived in Atlanta and Philly, because, once you're in jazz radio, people tell you who to listen to. It's not that many. So they always point you to WBGO and Rhonda Hamilton. So I would tune in because at that time there was the internet. So I was able to stream and I would listen to Awilda. I would connect with her on Twitter like, hey there, I'm out here. But also growing up in radio, Angie Martinez, Pat Prescott, you mentioned Frankie Crocker. Those were people that were like my mentors because I always felt like they connected to me. And so that's how I always wanted to do radio, was to connect with that audience.
Yeah, Frankie Crocker was definitely a mentor of mine as well. I mean, he didn't know it.
Here.
But the day I got the call from Wiley Rollins that I was, that he wanted me to come in for an interview. Wiley was the former program director of WBGO. I was sleeping, and in my dream, Frankie Crocker was having me in for an interview. So I wake up because the phone is ringing, and it's Wiley Rollins asking me to come into WBGO for an interview. So thank you, Frankie Crocker. But in terms of women in radio, certainly Pat Prescott, Vi Higginson, you mentioned earlier. Angie Martinez, weren't that many women, but they were Rhonda Hamilton for sure. And how about you, Awilda? Who were your mentors in this?
Well, it's funny because Pat described, coming up and always listening to the radio. And just like Nicole, we were not allowed to have a TV in our room. So I lived and died by my transistor radio. Now I'm telling how old I am. A little plug in the ears that would always wear out. And I would tell my mom, just get me a transistor radio. Listening to RVR, of course, Miss Pat, listening to Vi Higgins and many. I always was looking for women because during those days, there weren't that many women on the air. So it was such a delight to hear a female voice on the radio. But I spent most of my time listening to the radio, going to sleep, listening to the radio.
Oh, well, is that like a Caribbean thing? Like we're not allowed to have TVs in our room?
It probably is. It probably is. We had one big TV in the living room, and we weren't even allowed to go into the living room. So
wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's just, see how much has changed over the years. I mean, now
sure has.
Now we all have our phones, and you can watch television. I mean, look how much it has all changed over the years.
Here's the thing, Lezlie. Here's what I say about that is I think that's when things really started to break down, because I came of age in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So we listened to everybody's music, so you listen in a car, whoever was in charge of the radio. But once we had our home entertainment units to take to your room, we didn't have to listen to our parents' music or our brother or sister's music. We didn't have to listen to anything but what we wanted to.
Oh, no, I still make sure.
Radio became
my son listens to what I listen to.
That's important.
I did that for my son.
Too.
No, I did that. I'm from Buffalo. Thank you very much. But we had one station that was black radio. I could hear Ramsey Lewis, Aretha Franklin, and Grover Washington on the same station. Then when it started in the 80s, it started to become easy listening and a little over here and there. And like Pat said, you can listen to what you want to listen to and not be exposed to anything else. And I think that's technology has fostered, I think, the breakdown of music or in general, than to increase music. You know what I mean? Listen.
One other thing too, I want to piggyback on that too, Sheila, is that music used to be a shared experience in the truest sense of the word. Yes. I mean, like when you knew the new Stevie Wonder record was coming out or the new Miles Davis was coming out, it would be who got it first. And whoever got it first, come by my house, listen, and you would put the needle down and listen to every track on the record and share that experience together. Now everybody's got their headsets on, having their own little private moment. I think that we've lost something really important, and that is something that radio brings back to us when people are listening live. Though I do think it's important to have that convenience of making the shows available on demand later, because people do have lives that are busy, and that we can still fit these things in. But that shared experience, I think, is a really important thing that we need to hold on to.
And that's how I listen to jazz. I listen to jazz by, my brother or whoever, breaking down. This is Coltrane. Listen for this. When my brother heard me practicing my flute, he brought down, I was in the basement, he brought down Eric Dolphy Far Cry and made me listen to Far Cry and Left Alone. And I was like, I can't do this. You want to hear some flute? He put Eric Dolphy on. I really had to put my flute down for months. I wasn't going to touch it again. But it's again a shared experience, like you say, Pat. And even when I was a kid, I had my 45. I had my Beatles, carrying cases, and
me too.
Me too. Yeah.
And again, I think I think the pandemic really brought out another thing as far as being shared experiences is how important seeing live music.
Yes.
Going and hearing musicians perform live, to me, is tantamount to just saying it's a shared experience as well. And it became totally obvious when the pandemic happened and nobody could go anywhere. So
as a performer, trust and believe. It's
hard,
horrible. But the one thing we hear during our fund drives at WBGO, because we are listener supported radio, when we have our drives, our listeners say to us that during the pandemic, WBGO was so helpful and continues to be, and got us through. It got them through. Yes. What do you think was what we did that made that possible?
I think it's
play music.
I think it's the communal experience, this coming together where everyone at the same time was experiencing the same emotions, the same type of isolation, the same types of confusion and questions and just doubt about what we were all feeling collectively. It was this moment that we could take a break from the news. We can take a break from our personal worries and come together in the music and really be one. So I think allowing the music to kind of lead the way to bring us all together and have an escape from some of the harsher reality and kind of get lost in the music. And I think that's what we do. That's what the power is of what we do at WBGO. I know every Saturday, I always think of it as this is the time that we come together, and no matter how old you are, no matter what your race is, your religion, what you look like, how tall you are, whatever, we're united in the music. And it's the humanity that the artists that we love bring us through their music is what unites us. And that's the beauty of what we do. And I really see that as the mission and the goal of what we're supposed to do, unite people through this art form. And I think the pandemic kind of gave us even more of an opportunity to connect with the power and beauty of this music and the opportunity that we have.
Well, and also the pandemic, made all of us work differently. We all now work from home. Who thought we could do radio from home, and broadcast throughout the world? And that was no easy task at all. And thanks, of course, to the powers that be at WBGO, our president and CEO and all the people who behind the scenes who made WBGO present around the world during the pandemic. It's like, who would have thought we'd be having this conversation now, from our own homes in different places in the world.
And when you look at it from the other side too, people who are working from home who could not listen to the radio at work. I mean, or if you could, it was what station are we going to listen to? Whoever was in charge would determine what that was. Now people can really embrace the whole value of what we present as a radio station, as a soundtrack for your life, for your whole life, for your work life too. And the productivity that comes along with listening to music that really feeds you and serves you as this music does. I think those things are important.
Absolutely. Moving forward, where we don't have a radio station that people can just drop. I mean, we have a radio station, but people don't just drop by it because of so many restrictions we have now. When we were coming up in the music, you can drop by the radio station. You could, interact. We don't even do that much interacting since we're not going out that much anymore. But where do you see the future of women in media, since we're all working in various aspects of it? Where do you see that being, Pat?
I think the upside is great. I think we're increasingly getting more involved in management, which I think is important just because we're good managers. I mean, this is what we do. This is what we've always done. We've always run everything, the household,
Prescott for president.
Wherever we
Hello.
are.
Hello.
Multitasking mamas. Yep.
People are starting to realize how good we are at keeping all the balls in the air at the same time. We're very good at that. And certainly we're some of the best communicators that there are. And that's what this whole business is really about. I think that the sky's the limit right now for women in broadcasting.
And Nicole, you have I don't know if you can talk about it now, but I'm going to certainly mention that you have a podcast. So you're moving into the podcast world now.
I am. I'm combining two of my interests. Dare I say loves, don't judge. But yes.
No judging. Please share.
Well, it's really interesting too, because my family is from the West Indies. So this topic is something that's kind of always been a part of my life. But we're going to be discussing the relationship between jazz and cannabis in a way that's going to really talk about things we never really get to talk about. And because cannabis is becoming so openly talked about and a bit more accepted and not looked down upon as it used to, we're going to take that opportunity to really shine some light on things that happened in the history of jazz. And it's going to be really, really interesting. And I think whether you're into cannabis or not, you're going to really be interested in it. And I think even if you're not that into jazz, but you're into cannabis, you're going to be really interested to hear how these two things, it's really interesting to hear how they affected one another and how it continues to just be a part of the community, of the music community, and just of people's lives.
And
So it's going to
tell
be
me,
fun.
That's
tell
intriguing.
me, Nicole, how did you get interested in podcasting? I know this is a big topic now, podcasting, and I don't, how different is it from what you do normally in radio?
I like to run my mouth. You can't tell? No, I'm joking.
No.
Wow.
Well, podcasting gives you really an opportunity to talk about things that you can't necessarily talk about on a specific show. And you can really dive into your personality a little bit more. I think my audience knows me on WBGO, but they'll get to know me a little bit differently through this podcast. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
And the podcast is part of the WBGO studios.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
We're
we've
keeping
got a
it
lot of great
home.
things on the horizon at WBGO.
Absolutely.
And Nicole Sweeney's podcast is one of them. What would you all give young ladies coming up in this business? And do you see anybody in your circle of that we all hang out in that you see as a possible mentee in this business? And what advice would you give them?
I would say don't be afraid to seek guidance, right? Everyone who's sitting here got here because of someone else who was kind enough to extend a hand. I don't think any of us have done it alone or could do it alone. So don't be afraid to let someone know, hey, I'm interested in this, and nothing ventured, nothing gained. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And on the flip side, for all of us, don't be afraid to extend your hand to someone else, because the circle continues. And I think that is one of the things that's the very essence of jazz, this give and take, this passing on of the torch. It's a very unselfish music, right? So I think we need to embody that spirit when we have accomplished things, to extend the hand to someone else and show someone else the way. But I think, and connecting, it's so important to just find a community of people around you. I just participated in Dee Dee Bridgewater's Woodshed Network, where she brings together these budding musicians, and it's a residency where different industry people mentor these young women in music. And it's mostly about the business of music and how to make it beyond the music and what it takes to actually thrive in the business. So I think this connection and mentoring is so, so important. And I think as women, Abby Lincoln said, the best thing is to stand before the world and to speak your heart. I think we offer something unique, and we hold a different voice and a different energy in the spaces that we're in. And I think be proud of that. Hold your head high and realize that you have something unique to offer the world, even in spaces that are male dominated. So I would just say connect, don't be afraid to ask, and keep on trying. If it doesn't work out the first time, remember all the cassette tapes that I sent? Sometimes you got to keep knocking on the door until you can kick it in. So if you believe in something so much, go for it.
Now I have a question for Nicole. Yes, that was excellent.
Yeah, that was great, Monifa.
Absolutely. But Nicole, I was just curious. Sorry, Lezlie. I don't want to.
No.
You know me, I'm always gonna take control, right? No, I'm just curious, Nicole. How did you end up becoming the host in CLK? You did that for several years.
Oh goodness, the creator has a master plan, and I'm going to piggyback off of Monifa. When you feel something in your heart and your spirit, don't let anyone talk you out of it. And that's how I got to where I am today. When I left RTI, I wanted to go to Atlanta. At that time, everyone was going to Atlanta. And I thought about going to Atlanta, but was on the fence, and someone said, no, go out there. I know someone at the station. So I took a chance and went out there. And in about 2 weeks, someone had left their Sunday position. And they said, look, I can't promise you that this will be permanent, but we kind of need you. Can you work? And I said, of course I can. And Sunday turned into me getting a midday position because they just needed someone, and I happened to be there and really just showcasing my work. But they were like, hey, can you do middays? I hate to say it was the right place at the right time, but I think that was my path at that time because that's where the creator wanted me to be. So I was at CLK for about 7 or 8 years. And then I was like, you know what? It's time to step my game up, and I got to get to WBGO. No disrespect to WCLK, but I felt like if I wanted my career to be where I wanted it to be, I got to be at the place to be. And that's where I am.
Nice. Yes.
Yes,
But
indeed.
also, I want to point out, Nicole, you didn't come to BGO as an announcer, as I recall, right? You started in marketing or something?
No.
Well, my girl Awilda is pretty much highly responsible for helping me to get to WBGO. So I started out as a marketing assistant, but I was doing fill-ins.
Yeah.
But it was Awilda who said, "Hey, send in your tape. Hey, send in your tape. We have a new, I sent it in. I didn't get a response the first time. Can I tell you that?
You're a mentor. You're a mentor.
The first person never responded to my tape. Never responded to my email. And this comes from me working in radio about 8 years now. And Awilda said, "Now we have someone new. Send them your tape." And I said,
well, I had to go to Thurston. I said, "Nicole, just give me a week." And then I had to go and harass Thurston.
Yeah, Thurston was hard. I worked at WBGO, and then I tried to come back. And he was like, I'd come in, and then, but Dorothy Kirk, I love that woman. She's like,
but Nicole persevered.
This person, she said, just come on, hold on, just come back.
It's important to have women, or anyone really, but especially it's important to have women that back you up, that support you when you're not around, right? So, Awilda, thank you for that, because you did that.
You're welcome.
Leslie, Josh Jackson came in. I was filling in.
Oh my goodness, Josh Jackson! I go in for the interview. And Sheila's on the air for Rhonda.
Yeah.
Right.
He's like, go in there with Sheila, because I hadn't been on.
Because the day before, he said, "Hey, what do you think about Lezlie coming back?" I said, "I think it's a great idea." He said, "Well, what about you train her tomorrow?" I said, "Okay." He's like, "Yeah." And that next day,
And then he said, I said, "Well, when do you want me to come in?" He said, "Tomorrow to fill in for Rhonda." I was okay. That was
of all people, right? Not overnight, Rhonda.
Yeah, not overnight, because that's where I was figuring I'd go and do some overnights.
Right.
That is where I started on overnights at WBGO years ago, and then I did Saturday night, and then I the house party.
The house party, yeah.
And then I went to say that because I did the overnight February 15th. Oh, and I said
that's the entree.
I said to Thurston, I said, "Well, is somebody going to be there with me?" I mean,
no.
I did the board for James Brown, but I mean, he says, "Oh yeah, sure." I tell you, Harvey Wise, God rest his soul, he did
loved him.
Yeah, and I come in, nobody's there. It was like 1 o'clock. I was shaking. I had to start this show, and I was like, and Harvey was. I said, "Don't go. You have to stay here. I don't know if I'm going to blow up the board. I don't know what I'm going to do."
Blow up the board.
And then person forgot to tell me to fill out the timesheet. So a couple of weeks, I'm like, "Oh yeah, am I supposed to get paid?"
Well, pretty much at BGO, you were on your own until you learned the gig, and that's the way it was.
But
listening to these stories though, and I heard a lot of the same stuff in that other panel I was in the other day, and I just want to point this out: how much women in this industry support each other.
Absolutely,
that's right.
During that whole session, people were shouting out. I had forgotten all about how Sheila, when I got ready to leave BLS to go to CD 101.9, I pulled her into the bathroom. When she told the story, I remembered it. Pulled her in the bathroom. I said, "I'm leaving. You need to go for my job now." And I told her the whole thing, what was going on. And, a lot of times people think that women don't support each other. But I think in this industry, we've been pretty good at looking out for each other and putting a hand back and bringing somebody forward. There's so much there.
That was Sheila.
I did it with Nicole. I said, "Nicole, I'm leaving in 2017. I'm giving up the full-time gig. You got to go get the gig."
And I was in Atlanta when she told me that.
Exactly. Yeah.
You lobbied for me to do Sunday Morning Harmony and insisted I come to. Alfredo's going away party, and that's where Thurston pulled me aside at the party. He said, what do you think about piano guitar?" And I was like, "I'm thinking I don't even like piano guitar music." I said, "I know." I said, "I know a fair amount." And he said, "Yeah, you came in and made some tapes, so can you come in?" And I'm like, "Oh my God!" But he told me I really sounded horrible, so I couldn't put me on my way.
And he put you on anyway.
Because he needed a warm body.
So this is a true story. So I had a 9-to-5
It's
job.
a true story. I believe it.
Get off from work, and I'd go get public transportation Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday to BGO, and I would go into the library. Everybody was telling me what to listen to, and I would go and make tapes, my voice like I was doing a show, but to the music, and I was making notes about all the artists and all the things that I liked, and then I was giving the tape to Gary, everybody to like listen to this, So after a couple of weeks, he said, "Okay, now I hear enough that But again, I was like, "Well, listen to my tape. Listen to this. What do I do? What do I do? How do I do it?" But I was upset. I was determined. I was going to get this job. But
with Thurston, just like Sheila said, Thurston says to me, because I'm giving up Sunday Morning Harmony, where it was just piano and guitar, no horns. He said, who am I going to put in that slot? Because I was moving into yet another slot. I said, well, have Sheila do it. So I had to get Sheila to come to Alfredo's party so he can ask her to do it. And that's how that
didn't go. But how do we find that young lady to do that now? I mean, who is the next young person?
That's a great question. Yeah.
I'm always looking up. I'm ready to hang up my crown.
Okay, we're not saying goodbye, Sheila. No,
we're not doing that now.
That's a whole nother show.
Who in your realm, or what young lady are we going to bring up and bring into the fold? Because it's not as easy to do now.
It's not easy.
My friend just told me the other day. She said, "I just got a radio kit." I'm like, "What's a radio kit?"
Radio what?
Kit?
A kit to do podcasting. I didn't know what she was talking about, but it's just like, oh, you can just do radio, like just get a kit. But we all know that's not possible. No. But we had mentors. Who are we mentoring? I mean, who do we see in our world that, and how can we find those young women?
Well, I'm always looking at the interns, always. I mean, I've always had interns, and a lot of companies are trying to get rid of the internship programs now, which I think is terrible. And I guess that's the whole teacher side of me. I want to teach somebody something. But I've recently been teaching at Santa Monica College, teaching a broadcasting class there. And I've seen a couple of really talented people. I recommend, you were asking earlier about what we recommend to people. And I recommend that you learn how to do something, learn how to edit. Learn how to edit. If you can do audio editing and are willing to learn Adobe Audition and Pro Tools or whatever, as many programs as you can, Audacity, all of that, at least you'll be prepared to do a podcast. There is work that's involved. You can get jobs doing editing. And I think that if you're interested in being on the air, it's really good if you know how to do something else too. Marketing, sales, any of those things. Just get in however. You've heard enough stories tonight from people who got in all kinds of different ways. And then that led to on-air positions. But there just aren't as many of them as there were. There is the opportunity for you to create your own vehicles, though. And that's something I encourage. But you got to have a day job. You got to have something to make you some money.
I agree with Pat. The more tools you have in your tool bag, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out 2 other women of WBGO, Dorothon Kirk. Someone who has been the heartbeat and the lifeline of the station. There would be no WBGO without her. She's an inspiration to so many of us. So Dorothon Kirk, and then also Becca Polium, who brought me in in the 90s as assistant producer for Jazz Set with Branford Marsalis. And then I came on to be associate producer. And then when Dee Dee Bridgewater came, speaking of women who can do other things in producing and also just learning the art of storytelling. And, it was a wonderful experience. So she's someone else who I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Becca as well.
I want to jump on and say thank you to Dorothon. I actually met DK before I even came to WBGO at the Detroit Jazz Festival. And I don't think I ever met anyone who was so excited to see someone of my generation be in jazz radio. She welcomed me with open arms. And you can imagine, I was like, that's Hassan Roland Kirk. I mean, like DK's jazz royalty. So you get a little, nervous when you meet her for the very first time. But she welcomed me with open arms, and she was so excited for my future, even from that first time of meeting her. So then to end up at WBGO, to be able to see her almost every single day was, again, a testament that was where I was supposed to be. So yes, thank you to DK, who just inspires everyone when it comes to this music.
Yeah, I have to jump on the Darthon train too. Also,
yes.
To me, she was the first woman in radio I ever saw that was a boss.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Day one.
Boss.
And a boss with a heart and with so much consideration for people, a love of the music, when a lot of other people were very bitter about, what we perceive to be the lack of appreciation for America's classical music. And it is something to get upset about. I'm telling you, she embraced joy to me and just was always someone who was so warm and welcoming. And when I had the opportunity to come to this radio station, I got to say, Darthon Kirk was in the back of my mind as somebody who was so important to even be affiliated with. And so we love you, DK.
Yeah, we love you.
DK. Love you, DK. And I'm going to say another thing before I get in trouble. And no, this is on you, Awilda. It was actually Steve that hired me. I never actually got a chance to meet Thurston Briscoe, but it was Mr. Steve El Jefe.
Mr. Steve
hired me. So you got to give
Williams,
him
our CEO president.
So thank you, Steve.
We love you, Steve.
We love you, Steve. We love Jamara Wakefield also, who made this all possible.
Amen.
Thank you.
Yay.
We also want to say thank you
talk about a young person coming up.
Yes,
exactly.
Jamara is doing a fabulous job.
I'm like, we want Jamara to be a part of this conversation.
That's
she's
right.
our social media director. She is handling the business, and she's also our producer this evening for this panel discussion. So we thank you, Jamara. We thank Stephen Smith.
Jamara gives me hope. She really
go ahead. Go ahead, Sheila. I'm gonna let the queen of hang.
Jamara just gives me hope because I meet a lot of young people, and anyway, I'm not gonna go there, but I'm just saying Jamara Wakefield gives me hope.
She gives hope
for that generation. She's smart.
It's so inspiring.
So she's chill. She handles her business. She does a lot of things. I mean, just I'm in awe of
Yogi. I got on one day with her, and we had a meeting, and I was having a rough day. And she said, "Okay, maybe you just need to take a minute." And I said, that's what I'm going to take that minute. So thank you, Jamara, for giving me that minute. And
go Jamara.
So much more from this young lady. And we certainly hope that we have inspired some young women this evening with our stories and our shared conversations, and inspiring you to become involved in media in some kind of way, ask questions and get the job done, because this music and this medium certainly needs you. I want to say thank you to all my co-hosts, my sisters, Sheila Anderson, who's on, Monifa Brown, Pat Prescott, Nicole Sweeney, Awilda Rivera. I'm Lezlie Harrison, and we thank you all so much. Be sure you listen to all of us on the radio all the time on WBGO.org.
You want some religion? You better check out Come Sunday.
Hello.
That's right. Sunday morning, 6 a.m.
Love it.
That's the show right there. The Holy Ghost come through the house on Sundays. Yes.
Are we off the air?
I don't know. Is that a wrap? I don't know.